Welcome back everyone to Genshin Interact. We'll be taking a look at the first half of the 4.2 banners today. First looking into Baizhu and his first rerun, and then on the other side is the Hydro Archon herself, Furina. Let's go through both of these banners and see whether or not they are a good pulling option for you.
If you do enjoy the video, please go ahead and like and subscribe, and check out the rest of the channel for other videos you may be interested in. We also have a Discord you can join where our members can talk with each other and talk with us. The Great Physician of Liyue Harbor and the Hydro Archon are coming soon, but are they for you?
Now, onto the video. So the first character we're going to be looking at is Furina, actually. I know we talked in the intro about Baizhu and then Furina, but we are going to talk about Furina first, as I know a lot of people are excited about her. First looking at her team function, kind of where she fits in a team. She's going to be mainly supportive with her skills and even her burst as well, which we'll look at in a second. But she's going to be even a little bit of a Hydro sub DPS type support idea, very similar to how some other Hydro characters are, like Yelan, Xingqiu, even some other characters like Xiangling. All these characters off field is basically her high usage right at this point is probably what we're going to find out. And then looking as well at, she might really be good for Fontaine characters, but at this point it seems like that's where she kind of only stops. We're not really sure if she's going to be that good for other characters at this point in time, so we'll just have to see what the future brings. But with the kit itself, Rift, what can you tell us about that?
So looking at Furina, she does ascend into crit rate, and her normal attack is called Soloist Solicitation. Basically, using a charge attack will change her alignment from the Uxia and Numa, and then vice versa. She will start on-field aligned with Uxia every single time, so just keep that in mind, that when you pull her out on field, she'll always have Uxia. Only special thing here in her normal attack is that at intervals when Furina's normal or charge attacks hit, a Spirit Breath Thorn or a Surging Blade will descend, dealing Hydro damage based on the alignment she currently is in. Now looking at her skill, this is called Salon Solitaire. This will summon either Salon members or the Singer of Many Waters depending on her Uxia or Numa alignment. When she's in her Uxia alignment, which again she'll be on that automatically every time you pull her out on field, she will summon the Salon members, and these guys will deal damage based on Furina's max HP. When they attack, if characters nearby have more than 50% HP, they will consume that character's HP and increase their damage based on the number of characters. Now specifically, just so you're not confused, this is increasing the Salon members' damage, not those characters' damage. It's draining the character's HP as long as they're over half, and then increasing those off-field Hydro dudes' damage. Now, if you use her skill when you're in the Numa alignment state, Furina will summon the Singer of Many Waters. This Singer of Many Waters will heal nearby active characters based on Furina's max HP. Switching between the Numa and Uxia does not refresh the duration of the members that are on field. So for example, if you have the Salon members on field with her Uxia alignment, if you go and switch to Furina's Numa alignment, it's not going to refresh the duration of those Salon members on field. If they have 5 seconds left, based on whatever the duration is for them, it's not going to refresh them back to their base duration. So it's not like Fischl or Kokomi with their, Oz in the Bakekurage. They're not going to refresh.
Looking at her burst, it's called Let the People Rejoice. The initial hit deals AoE Hydro damage based on Furina's max HP. This will create a field of foam and gives the universal revelry state to members inside of it. When this state is applied, when party members' HP increases or decreases, 1 fanfare point will be granted for each percentage of change in those party members' HP. Furina also increases the damage dealt by the party members and increases their incoming healing bonus based on the amount of fanfare points that she has. At this point in time, we usually talk about a similar character comparison, but at this point, looking at everything that she's really given in her kit, she's really not like too many characters. But we will go with the section that we usually only talk about with new characters, and we're going to talk about some upsides and some possible downsides as well in what she'll maybe bring in 4.2. The upsides that we see is that she seems like she'll bring a good amount of healing, especially with that off-field skill, which is very, very nice. It's another Hydro character with some good healing, but at the same time, she can do a lot of good damage. She'll have some good off-field that can be turned into said damage with the other version or the Uxia alignment with her skill. It seems like she's going to be very, very helpful for Fontaine characters. And actually going into her downsides, that actually might be the problem sometimes that we're going to be thinking about. She might be really, really good for Fontaine characters, considering all of this help for HP increase and decrease, but other characters, maybe besides people like Zhao even, would probably be the only other character. Hu Tao does lose some HP, but it's really not consistent enough to really give a huge buff. but at this point in time, it seems like she's only really going to be good for on-field Fontaine characters.
I will say that I'm pretty excited, or just kind of looking for when she does release and people start playing with her. I'm going to be looking for, me personally, I'm going to be looking for maybe teams that she could be used in that don't involve any Fontaine characters, just because, you know, I didn't pull Nervalette, I didn't pull Wriothesley, I only have Fremine and Lynette, I didn't pull Lenny either, so I'm just kind of curious to see how good she can be, even for non-Fontaine units.
Yeah, I think it'll be really, really good. And maybe the other downside that she could have is that she's not going to be a DPS role until probably her Constellation 6, which, to be honest, at this point, I really don't feel is too much of a heavy hit, considering we just got Nervalette, and if you already have him, most likely you're not going to worry too much about getting him, you know, as a DPS, as he's already there and is already taking care of that role. Her not being a DPS doesn't really hurt you too much if you have him.
So now looking into Baizhu, starting out with his team function, he's a heavy support as a healer and a shielder at the same time, which is something kind of unique to Baiju's kit. There's really no other character in the game, at least that I can think of right now, that heals and shields at the same time. So it's a kind of unique thing to do there. He does ascend into HP percent whenever you're going through his ascensions, which is good for him because that's going to obviously increase his healing and his shield strength. Looking at his playstyle specifically, of course, as we just mentioned, him being a healer and shielder, he's heavily playable off-field. Now, there are some arguments made for him being played on-field, maybe as some damage, and we'll talk maybe a little bit about that later on. But just remember, he is primarily an off-field support unit, and this is how we would recommend playing him. So looking at his skills and some of his abilities that he can do, his skill will apply Dendro while healing, and it throws out a swirl of Dendro that attacks up to 3 enemies, and then it returns back to Baizhu. Once it returns, it will heal all nearby party members based off of Baiju's max HP. His burst will create a shield around himself, and every few seconds, this current shield that he has created will break, and then it gets replaced by a new one. So it's refreshing itself. So even if it is breaking, it actually is refreshing itself, so it's kind of constantly renewing. So you can kind of ensure that when you use this burst, you know you will have a shield on your characters intermittently for however long that duration is. Also, when a new shield is created during his burst, or the shield is broken like I was just talking about, the shield heals the active character and sends out a Dendro attack to nearby opponents.
Looking at some similar character comparisons, there is maybe an argument to maybe talking about Zhongli, how he's going to be obviously the best shielder in the game, and although he does not heal until you obviously get to higher constellations, he does maybe have this ability to just make sure that you never have to worry about healing. He does decrease enemy elemental and physical resistance though, so there's Zhongli's kind of capability and helpfulness there. Yao Yao, on the other hand, is free that we got at least in an event thing that we got a long time ago. If you guys have been playing for a while, hopefully you chose her instead of maybe another Leeway character or, you know, some constellations or whatever. But if you did get Yao Yao either through banners recently or just through that event, she's going to be a great Dendro healer, a great opportunity to use, and a very similar character, and a great character at that. Now looking into the weapon banner, the first weapon we're going to look at is Furina's personal weapon, which is Splendor of Tranquil Waters. The main stat of this weapon has 88.2% crit damage at level 90, and the abilities at Refinement 1 are going to be stated. When the equipping character's current HP increases or decreases, elemental skill damage dealt will be increased by 8% for 6 seconds with a max of 3 stacks. When other party members' current HP increases or decreases, the equipping character's max HP will be increased by 14% for 6 seconds with a max of 2 stacks. So looking at this weapon here, we see that Furina is obviously going to be the best character for it. The other idea that maybe we came up with was some sort of damage kooky, or even just kooky in general. If she's being played with some other Fontaine characters, you could throw this on a support character to maybe help the other Fontaine characters, considering their HP will increase and decrease as well. The other possibility that we just don't have at this point in time is other future Fontaine characters that could use swords. Any of these characters might be good to use this weapon in the future.
Alright, so now looking at Jadefall Splendor, this is Baiju's weapon, and at level 90, it's going to have a main stat of 49.6% HP. The ability on this weapon, assuming it's Refinement 1, the ability on this weapon states that using a burst or creating a shield grants 3 seconds of elemental damage bonus increase based off of the wielder's max HP and regains energy. this can also happen off field. So this obviously is very good for Baizhu, as it's going to solve some energy problems that you may be experiencing, as well as just the massive HP main stat, significantly helping out Baiju's support and capabilities to be a good utility for a team as both a healer and a shielder, as well as Dendro application. So once again, obviously this is going to be best on Baizhu. Some other characters that you could argue for using this weapon, one of the first characters we thought of was Kokomi. In Kokomi's kit, her damage scales off of her healing. So the more HP you put on Kokomi, not only increases her healing, but also her damage. And so her normals will be increased by her max HP. While there is no crit on the weapon, this is actually good for Kokomi because Kokomi can't crit. So you don't have to worry about a damage stat in this case, because Kokomi already is not critting during her on-field damage. If you built her that way, maybe with Ocean Hued Clan, this is going to be very good for her just because it's that HP. Again, you may even get her over 50,000. Typically you see a 40,000 Kokomi, and that's pretty good. But moving on into our summary of the video, this is where we're going to be asking some important questions that you may want to ask yourself before just pulling on a banner. That way you can correctly gauge if you really need or if you just really want the character. Again, if you really just want the character, don't hesitate. Don't feel like you shouldn't or should not. I mean, it is a video game after all, so pull for who you like. But if you really are just wanting to get far in the game, maybe you want to do floor 12 of the Abyss, these are going to be some important questions that can help you with that. So the first question, Vixen, I'll ask you is, do you need either of these characters on your account? And what do you have to say about that?
Well, looking first at Furina, Furina's usage is based on having a lot of other Fontaine characters that are on field, or specifically we're just talking about Zhao as well. I'll just throw in the mix, considering in his burst he can lose a lot of HP pretty rapidly. At this point in time, characters like Linny, Zhao, Nervalette, Wriothesley, any future Fontaine characters are going to be really, really good for Furina, and I think that'll be really, really good. My only thought or scared thought is basically in the back of my mind, is she not going to be good for any other team? It seems like her entire kit is basically only based on just her Fontaine character teams. I think that she'll have a lot of good application, especially with the off-field, and maybe some buffs that she can maybe give some really good healing as well. I think with some other teams, though, her burst isn't really going to be that great or amazing. It's just going to be really focused on that skill for the damage and the healing.
Yeah, because I just one example that came to my mind is like if you're using your Alhaitham team and you're wanting to use Furina's burst off field, yeah, you're getting maybe some good application with her skills, but like if you're not losing HP with Alhaitham, maybe you're using a shielder like Baizhu, for example, or just Zhongli. If you're not losing the HP, you're not giving her the fanfare points in my mind, and so you're not getting damage bonuses or the healing bonuses, which you don't need because you have a shielder. So like, it's like you said, outside of those Fontaine mechanics of just decreasing and increasing HP, it's going to be very interesting to see how she can fit into some non-Fontaine character teams.
I think the other thing that's great to think about as well is Bloom teams. I think Nilou and Nahida is going to be amazing, though, considering Nilou is going to be bursting those cores and taking a lot of damage from them. But with the high amount of healing that Furina could probably give, it's going to be great to have that decrease and then that immediate heal to Nilou. If you're going on field with her, then you're going to have to actually focus and help. That actually could be really good for Furina as well. And even if it's a character like Alhaitham that is on field, even if you have a character like Baizhu or whatever, the increasing HP aspect does help as well. So if you even start the fight at half HP for your DPS, healing does help as well because it is a decrease or an increase. The problem is that you usually just want to try not to have your DPS lose a lot of HP consistently, which is why I think our thought process is more or less scared at this point of watching whether or not things can actually happen either way. But looking at Baizhu, for instance, as our next character, he's actually useful for an account. Baizhu is great for Bloom teams and basically any Dendro-related reaction teams, since one of his passive buffs increases a lot of damage for those Dendro-related reactions. So I think Baizhu is a great character just in general for the healing and the shielding. He's just great in general. But at the end of the day, he is just a better Yao Yao. So at the end of the day, if you do just have Yao Yao and you've built her already pretty well at that, it might even just be better to just sit on your Yao Yao. But looking in the next question, we're looking at what elements or roles is your account in need of? And Rift, how can you answer that?
Well, Furina isn't really needed for Hydro characters besides Hydro-related reactions for other characters. But once again, she'll probably only really do best for Fontaine characters. Once again, we've been bringing this up, and it's just an important thing to realize, because maybe you're a new player, you want this cool new Archon, you always hear that Archons are just goated, they're amazing, and this is true. The thing is, if you don't have those Fontaine characters, it's just, again, it's really difficult to see how she can reach her max potential. It's not that she'd be bad, just not max potential.
Yeah, and I think the bloom, once again, is another thing that it's like, I really want to have Furina, but I don't want to build a bloom team, nor do I have any Fontaine characters. That can really hurt you.
Yeah, and I think one reason you may not want to build a bloom team is, again, kind of a similar scenario. You don't have Nilou. So that's a demotivation to want to go and build a bloom team. Not that bloom teams can't work. There are characters like Kaveh, and I've even seen people use Candace. Giving that Hydra Infusion can create some interesting bloom comps. But again, it's because of not having Nilou, and not wanting to make a bloom team, and in a similar way, not having Furina, not wanting to make a HP mitigated team. If you have the ability to, get Baizhu for your Dendro teams. Amazing heals and great passive buffs from Baizhu that Vixen already did mention in the last question is a solid reason for wanting to pull Baizhu. I know I myself, I kind of want Baizhu, although I already have a really well-built Yao Yao. So I'm kind of conflicted on, I don't need Baizhu. I've noticed this, but I want Baizhu. And so that's why I'm conflicted. It would be an upgrade to my Dendro teams just because of his second passive, increasing those types of damage with Dendro-specific reactions, as well as just probably more potent heals than Yao Yao, as well as adding a shield on top of it. It would be definitely an upgrade, but it's not replacing a role I don't have. Because Yao Yao is already filling that role for me and doing completely fine in my Nilou Bloom teams, for example. Looking at the next question, we ask, do you have the resources to properly invest into the characters that you pull? And Vixen, what do you have to say about that?
Well, Furina is a Fontaine character, obviously she's the Archon, and will take the new boss materials from the new weekly boss in 4.2, and the overworld boss materials in the new area as well. She'll be taking the new flowers found in the new area, so make sure that you are heavily caught up with the story if you wish to build her at a higher level. Baizhu takes leeway materials, which will make him pretty easy to actually grind and get him up to a high level, so just make sure you get out of Mondstadt and you'll be set. Looking at the next question, what kinds of teams are you trying to build? And Rift, what would you say to answer that for these two characters?
Again, and we've said it many times in this video, Furina really only seems to be best, keyword best, for teams with Fontaine on-fielders. It's not to say she wouldn't be good for teams that don't have Fontaine characters. Again, I'm kind of in that situation. I didn't pull for any of the Fontaine DPSs, but if I do get Furina, I'm curious to know how well she can still be outside of that. And with Baizhu, he's really just gonna increase the potential of any Dendro-related teams. Just, again, that second passive is one of those really, really good passives that you can look for in the game. And obviously, he's gonna be an insane upgrade to someone like Yao Yao. Or if you don't have Yao Yao, Baizhu has that much more value for you.
Looking at the next part, we're going to be weighing the dangers from new free-to-play players to veteran free-to-play, people who've been playing for a while and spend a little bit, all the way to the whales. These questions are for the people who generally are looking for help on whether or not they should pull one of these characters. Once again, like Riff said earlier, at the end of the day, they are your hard-earned primos, so you decide on how you want to spend them, not anyone else. Looking at free-to-play players, though, these kinds of players need characters that slot into a lot of different teams, a plethora of different teams that make the game easier before the late game content really kicks in. Furina is probably not your best bet to get an Archon that you're maybe looking at this point in time. Like Riff was again talking about earlier, all these other Archons are great and amazing, and yeah, she could work on a lot of different teams, but especially if you're free to play and you're trying to just focus on maybe the best characters to really go after, and you don't have Fontaine characters, you don't have a Bloom team, it really starts to devalue her a lot more, at least in our minds from what we can see standing in this point before she actually comes out. Looking at Baizhu, he might be a bit above what you need at this point as well, especially if you're an early game player. If you've been playing actually for longer than a little while, you should have Yao Yao at this point, since we got the option to get her for free a while back, or maybe she's come up on a banner recently that you've pulled for and gotten her. Now we're going to be talking about veteran spenders, veteran free-to-play players, as people in the middle bracket. And at this point, you guys should already have a decent lineup by now, probably 2 4-person teams, if not more, for the Spiral Abyss. If you've built up recent Fontaine teams with Linny, Neuvillette, Ridsley, any character that really has a lot of HP changes, Bloom teams, once again, we've gone over that 1,000 times, it would not be a bad decision to go after her. I know we've been talking a lot about how there's a lot of detriment that we see to getting her, but she's really, really not that bad. And if anything, at this point, she has a lot to offer to a lot of different teams at this point in time.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's just really that we're erring on the side of caution. That's really all we're trying to do here, is just so you guys, maybe some of you out there, oh, I'm going to pull Furina. She's going to be my first 5-star pull. You know, you're a new player, right? And then she's not what you expected. So that's all we're really getting at, is just know that she has a lot more value with those Fontaine units.
Now looking at Baizhu, if you have a Bloom team with Nilou and or Nahida, Baizhu should be next on your agenda to get. He'll be good to buff your Sino Aggravate team, and even a help to Alhaitham for healing. And if Baizhu, in this specific instance with Alhaitham, is on Deepwood Memories, that'll help Alhaitham as well, since that 4-piece set will actually bring down that Dendro resistance. At this point in time, a lot of people could actually focus on Alhaitham off of 4-piece Deepwood and actually put him on Gilded Dreams, which would actually help his damage a lot more and focus him better in a better artifact set.
Yeah, no, that's a great point you brought up, actually. That's another reason I think Baizhu has a lot of just high quality to pull for. A lot of people will put him on an S tier. I've just seen, rankings ever since he kind of came out. And I would agree with that. He definitely is S tier. And the reason I said you brought up a great point is because, again, he can be a great placeholder for a 4-piece artifact set that maybe other characters you want on more personal damage. So, like you were saying, he could be on the Deepwood Memories. He could be the placeholder for that to allow your Alhaitham to be on a more damage or selfish set like Gilded Dreams, or whatever you want to use there. And so that's a great point you brought up. And also you did state that adding some Dendro Resonance with someone like Alhaitham, just increasing the EM of everyone, that's very helpful in a Dendro team. Dendro teams love that. So now looking at high spenders, looking into what constellations will benefit characters the most is going to be probably your best bet, since you're probably, if you're high spender, we're kind of assuming you're getting most of the new characters, if not all of them. So looking at those constellations, usually the C1 and C2 are some of the best ones to go after, and they're more budget friendly than obviously going after a C6. So looking at Furina and her constellations, her best constellation we've determined is going to be her C6, because that does turn her into more of an on-field damage dealer, and it's going to really ramp up what she can do for a team. It kind of changes her gameplay altogether from off-field to on-field. But before her C6 is probably her second constellation, and here's why. This constellation increases her fanfare gain and increases her max HP each fanfare point that goes over the limit. So essentially, you're getting more fanfare points, which means you're getting more damage to your other characters and more max HP from Furina, which increases that healing bonus and healing that she can give to the other characters. So overall, a very good constellation to go after if you want maybe some constellations for your Furina. Looking at Baizhu, he again has a great 6th constellation. The others aren't that bad either, but none of these are really amazing enough to make most people think about grabbing constellation on Baizhu. Just having Baizhu at C0 is plenty to make your account do a little bit better, maybe have an upgrade to Yao Yao. He's very good at C0.
Looking at the last question we have is, do you need the weapons? Looking at Splendor of Tranquil Waters, it's a great weapon for Furina and possibly other future Fontaine sword users it could be really good for, but it's not necessarily a great weapon in general right now to go after. Jadefall Splendor is nice and very similar to how Splendid of Tranquil Waters is. It's really not necessary to go after, since Baizhu has a lot of 4-star options that he could use. Other characters are not really going to desire this weapon over their own personal weapons anyways, so it's kind of just one of those weapons, kind of like Vortex Vanquisher, for instance, for a Zhongli. A lot of people like to use Staff of Homa instead, but at the end of the day, these two weapons don't seem amazing necessarily to go after, and this is why I'm going to say that overall this weapon banner isn't really necessary or extremely desirous to really pull on, and we personally would advise against it for now. If you are looking in the future to get a character that you know is probably maybe going to be a sword user or something and is going to be a Fontaine character, that HP increase and decrease thing that we're seeing constantly with Fontaine characters, it might not be a bad idea to go after Splendor of Tranquil Waters. And if you have Baizhu, getting his weapon wouldn't really hurt as well either.
Yeah, obviously getting the character's signature weapons, obviously that's their best in slot, so do remember that. Like, if you want Furina's weapon or Baizhu's weapon for your Furina or Baizhu, then obviously, yeah, that's going to be the best in slot. But, like, if you're trying to pull Splendor for your Kuki, the Splendor of Tranquil Waters, if you're trying to pull that for Kuki, I would just say, if you're trying to pull a 5-star for Kuki, I think your best bet's Kiev Kashini Su. So why would you pull that for her? You know, so just like you were saying. And that just about wraps everything up. So we hope that this video could be helpful to decide on whether these characters coming up on this next banner are for you guys.
As always, if you have any suggestions that may help other players, go ahead and let us know in the comments. Thank you again for watching the video, and we'll see you in the next one.